Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at a ton of special illustration rares and illustration rares from the Scarlet and Violet era that are diving in prices. Now, this is a video to sort of act as a caution. A lot of people are sort of going into investing in Pokemon, particularly with the perspective that there's an internal growth story that's potentially available for a lot of these cards, but the truth is, regardless of what commodity and what investment asset you are potentially looking into, there's almost always the opportunity and chance for loss. The stock market has been diving recently. Bitcoin has been losing immense amounts of value. Talks of a recession are on the horizon. With such a situation, disposable income and money being placed into investments is quite short. People are most of the time focusing on bare necessities and expenditures that are important at that moment. There's a very, very strong chance that a lot of cards will start to follow the trend that's sort of taking place in the overall economy. There's nothing that's immune to loss, and so I really want to show off these cards and sort of explain, the movement that's sort of kind of taking place right now. And I want it to act as a caution, so you always have that at the back of your head, right? There's nothing that's going to eternally grow. The market can contract severely at times, and it's important to diversify investments. Only go in where you know it's okay that you can lose the amount that you're putting in, because it's very, very important to make sure you're making the right decision and not giving into FOMO or hype. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Alright, we're just going to go through a bunch of these cards right now. So starting off with the Magic card, this is a card that has dropped a little bit. I mean, it's definitely not experienced a recorrect to the extent where, if you bought this card any point, even before December or even before January, you're still looking fine for now. But this card, it was going for, if we take a look in the past month, it was going for $280, and it has recently dropped down to $248. That's a substantial drop. And so, if you bought the card up here, yeah, it's dropped quite a bit. I'm not saying it's not going to recover, right? But it's always important to note that, these drops are possible, and it's not necessarily guaranteed that things are going to jump back up. Obviously, when you invest in quality products and you're all right to have a long time horizon, then you're looking much better, especially for sealed. I'd say sealed is a safer option. I personally go with sealed more often than not. Singles are a rare and sort of specific type of investment that I make in when I really, really love an artwork, and I think it'll add to my collection as well as act as an investment. That's the only time I really, really go into singles at any particular point. In Scarlet and Violet, I've made a decent number of purchases. I've made a decent number of purchases for X and Y, Sun and Moon recently, but by no means is that the majority stake for me in Pokemon, right? So this card is great, but I would never buy this card for $248, right? It's very, very expensive now. I prefer to go in when the cards are low and then experience growth if it achieves it to an extreme extent, or it might drop, but it's not so substantial because I didn't put too much into the card. So that's sort of the philosophy I go with singles. And so you'll kind of see, throughout this video, a lot of these cards have dropped substantially. One of the cards that we have is the Alolan Executor from Surging Sparks, and now Surging Sparks has had a decent amount of contraction in its price, sort of recorrect, and I always said this card was unique. Not my favorite, but I definitely see it because I saw it in person, really, really great. The watercolor in the background, the rainbow border sort of blending in with that sunset, and it's also connected artwork with the Execute, so there's that as well to consider. Sort of adds to the profile of the card. But if we take a look over the past 6 months, this set came out not too long ago, so that's why we don't have the entire 6 month graph. But we see this card was going for $101 at one point, almost a 50% drop in value since then. So that's a really, really tremendous loss, and it's not even showing signs of sort of coming back up. Recent sales are under market price right now for this card, going for 54, 53, 53, 53. One little anomaly over here, but generally seems to be going down. Next up, we have the Gold Pikachu, and this is one that I actually mentioned in my Surging Sparks video, that it was quite overvalued and seemed completely ridiculous for it to be so expensive. One, because gold cards are not that popular anymore with illustration rares and special illustration rares. Second, we've seen Pikachu cards sort of have hype in the past and sort of drop down in value, and so unless they have true intrinsic value, in the sense that they're very, very hard to pull and they are singular artworks, going to be in a set that stands the test of time. Now, Surging Sparks is by no means a Vivid Voltage, right? Vivid Voltage clearly only had the Chunky 2, whereas Surging Sparks has a number of factors going for it. But for this card to be going for the highs it didn't seem right. is we see this card was going for pretty much $200, and now it has dropped all the way to $110. Recent sales show some dropping even below $100 right now. Next up, we have the Fuller Pikachu. Similar story. I'm not going to say too much more beyond that. So we see this card was going for $41.68. And now it's dropped down to 32. It's been experiencing this sort of oscillating curve. There's a genuine possibility it's going to drop more, and we see the amount of sales have been reducing as it shows the demand for this card has been dropping quite a bit. We see recent sales are really going below $30 actually right now, with the exception of this one, this LP. We have 28, 30, 29, 26, 27. So this card definitely looks like it's going to drop. Next up, we have the Pikachu SAR, and this is still nowhere near where I expect it to be at some point. It's dropped to some extent. It was going for $492, and now it is going for $451. Recent sales show some going for even less, 404, 403. We still have some, hanging in there, 403, 380. This is probably a PSA slab, honestly. Let's take a look. Yeah, this is a PSA 9, so, also take a look in whenever there are images, and when it's really low like that, it's probably something else, right? But generally we're seeing a decent number of these cards sort of going below. Next up, we have the Stellar Crown Squirtle. This card has been dropping from $80. It's going for $65 right now. We see this card is doing a little bit better than the other ones, sort of going back up a little bit. So we have two that are level with the market value, and then one that's going above. We have a few that were sort of teetering below. I'd assume this is some sort of different variation, because that seems a little too low for the card. 64, 63, right? So it's not doing as bad. There's a chance it could plateau, but with the movement of general illustration right now, there's a chance it could continue dropping. Next up, we have the Bulbasaur. This card has similar movement to the Squirtle. It was going for $70, and now it's going for $60. Recent sales show it going for $69, $59, 48, 59, 61, 58. Next up, the Drowsy, and I think this is one that quite expected, because this card really moved high because of the buyouts and the manipulation and so forth that was taking place. I think I made this statement. I don't recall if it was for the Drowsy specifically or a general statement about illustration rares, but one of my previous videos I was kind of saying how the Iron Crown had this kind of buyout movement happening when Temporal Forces first came out. That Iron Crown was under $50, and then a lot of this sort of hype spiking happened. It went up to 80, and then it slowly climbed back down. It's not going for nearly as much. I think it almost went for 100 for a few days, but so it sort of came back down. And same story with the Drowsy. It's almost back to the point it was before that sort of spike. Yes, this card has been moving a lot more. If you bought this at $5, I'm not saying this is going to go to $5 again, right? Before the 6 month. If we go back a year, this card was going for $5 almost, right? So if you bought the card there, I'm not going to say it's going to go back down that low. That's one of the benefits of investing low and sort of buying low and then letting cards mature, assets mature. That's one of the benefits. Get things before they explode, right? And so we see this card. It jumped up. It had one of those spikes to 32. It spiked again to 63 and has been dropping to 43. We see this card is sort of all over the place, honestly. 41, 44, 40. We have some 49, 48, right? So it's going all over the place. I don't expect this card to drop too much below 30 at least. I'd say that's at least a bottom for this card because that's where it was before the jump. But for it to be $60 was completely crazy because yeah, it's a nice artwork, no doubt, right? I was saying it's a good choice when it was $30, but for it to be $60, right, it's not a very popular Pokemon. Magikarp, on the other hand, people love it. There's a Gyarados in the background. Shinji Kondo artwork. There are three things that are really exciting and unique to that card. Plus, abstract artworks are having their day in the sun right now. That could change, could not change, we don't know. But there were really like 4 factors in that case, right, going for that card. This one, we really just have a nice artwork, and that's pretty much all I would say is really unique to this card. Next up, we have the Frigibacks, and this entire line has been dropping like crazy. It was going for $11, jumped to $28, and is now going for $19. If we take a look at this next evolutionary stage in the line, we have Artibacks, $4, jumped up to $40. So before the actual jump, it was going for like 10. Went to $40 and has come back down to $16.32. I had this card like because I pulled it, right? And honestly, I was thinking about, should I sell it? It just started drop before then, so I was just like, what, it is what it is. The Backs Caliber, same deal. The entire line follows that sort of style. But yeah, so this card was going for $10, jumped up to $54. I think it's a really solid artwork, so yeah, sure, it should be valued more than $10. 54 seems a little extreme. Now it's coming back down to 27. I'm not saying, this card might not be worth that much maybe like 5 years down the line, but for things to jump so dramatically, so extremely, like if we take a look, for instance, on that day, we had 69 items sold between $11.85 and $75. I think that says it all. Next up, we have the Brute Bonnet, and honestly, again, the abstract style going on over here. Taking a look at the card, jumped tremendously. $30 and dropped down to $16. Seems to be plateauing a little bit over there in this case. Next up, we have the Eevee, and this card, I think it will probably go back up at some point because there's a pretty distinct element to this card where there are 8 Eevees, sort of signifying every sort of evolution that exists. This card crossed $100 and then started its decline downwards, going for 88, 82, 82, 80, 80. So it seems to be dropping a little bit still, right? I'm not saying this card is not going to continue dropping, but I'd say it's definitely one of the best illustration rares out there. So there's a better chance for this one to recover. Next up, we have the Persian from Shrouded Fable, and this one spiked a little bit before the Drowsy did because it went up due to Rocket and a lot of the craze that was going on with it. I think this card honestly might have another spike. We haven't really had any card reveals for Rocket yet. Unlike Owner's Pokemon, where we saw the Ends Rush run very, very early on, we haven't seen any specific artworks yet. I think we heard rumors that there's going to be a Mewtwo, like Rocket's Mewtwo or something, but apart from that, there isn't really anything. That might not even be the case. That could have been just rumors, right? So the main point is, when there's more information, there's a chance these cards are going to spike, and I wouldn't say long term these are really that great. Yeah, Persian's nice, but historically as well, Persian isn't that particularly beloved even in the OG Owner's Pokemon sets. Next we have Metagross, very popular Pokemon, back from Generation 3 I think. Went up to $38. This one was growing a little bit more gradually comparatively. Went to 22, jumped to 38, and is dropping now to $28. Final few, and this is going to be the Swablu. I actually mentioned this in terms of the cards that were experiencing humongous jumps in my video on illustration rares. Completely crazy. $6 to $21. Now it's dropping. It's at $17 right now. Recent sales are dipping below that market price. This card, really nice one, but this has dropped tremendously. 24, and now it is down to $13. Recent sales, so we have a $12.98, 17. We have a 12, 13, 14, 12, 12. So a couple going below that market value. I do like that there's a Gengar and a Ghastly and a Drifloon in this card, but again, dramatic jumps tend to be followed by either even more dramatic growth or horrendous drops, I've noticed in Pokemon, at least in Scarlet and Violet. Next up, we have the Slitherwing, and this is a very different artwork. It's very simplistic. We're seeing a sort of ancient Volcarona chilling on the corner here. Some sort of blue luminescent color happening. $5 to $20, and now back down to $13. Dondozo. Now this is Scarlet and Violet base card, and we have two wishy-washy Titan Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet base. Is sort of the combination of these two, so you'd have some sort of connection to that, right? And this card went up to $8, jumped to $15, and down to $12. Not as dramatic movement. I'd say this card is still not bad a choice, right? It's pretty unique, pretty solid art style, and Tatsugiri is actually quite popular, and we have two in this card. Next up, we have the Bubble Mew, and this card has been dropping quite a bit. It was going for $415 and is now going for $361. I remember saying that this card was overvalued, and it was not that this card shouldn't be here, right? 3 years down the line. My point is that sometimes you gotta consider whether cards jumped too dramatically, too quickly. What the remaining cards from the generation are going to look like is the card itself a unique artwork, which in this case it definitely checks off that box, right? But for me, we still have an entire year of Scarlet and Violet left, and my main point at the time was I had stuff like Destined Rivals, Prismatic, Journey Together, Mega Cards, Anniversary sets. Oh my gosh, there's so much happening, right? Black and White set. You never know when sentiments and excitement is going to shift to different cards. This card will always have a good amount of value, right? But the fact is, it went from, in the past year, we can see, it went from pretty much towing the line above 90 to having tons and tons of spikes up. Far, far fewer sales, and if we take a look at recent transactions with this, we see it's dropping below market value still, continuing that trend. Final card, we have the Obsidian Flames Charizard, another one that's been very sort of chaotic. This card was going for around $90-ish, $80-ish on release. The card dropped dramatically and it's been sort of sitting around $50, under $50 for a while. Then had a few spikes up, jumped all the way to 85, and now it is sort of coming back down, $64. Take a look at recent sales. We see 63, 64, 77, and then 77 again, 64, 62. So very volatile card, lots of chaotic sales and purchases. I think people's opinion of this card is definitely dependent on their mood and perspectives at the time, because we do have two other Charizards. And if I'm being honest, despite having pulled this Charizard, right, I do think that the 151 Charizard is more attractive for a lot of people because of the set as well, and because of the storyline that accompanies it. And then the Paladin Fates is literally shiny, very similar art style, but we actually have a shiny Charizard, which I don't think anyone's gonna say they don't like that more, right? Black Charizard are very aggressive and ferocious looking, right? So obviously has that playing for it. But then we also have this really nice sort of simplistic dark type Charizard. So it's still pretty nice. I'd say not too bad at $64, right? This one has been sort of having bizarre swings in its value, but I'd say 64 is pretty reasonable. I mean, if this card drops, probably not going to be far below 50, right? But that'll do it for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed. I just wanted to really show that things are not always guaranteed in Pokemon, right? You gotta be aware and also sort of gauge the risk whenever you're making a purchase, right? Always consider what you're willing to sell at when it comes to the bottom, and what your expectations are for cards, right? Having some sort of projections, and also learning to diversify, right? For me, I never put everything into singles. Also, when it comes to sealed, for instance, I'll always mix it up between sets. I'll mix it up between product styles. I'll put more into sets that I think are stronger. Sort of, I try, for instance, for Journey Together, I made a video which I posted about a week ago, and I was taking a perspective of, okay, what would I look at, how would I look back on Journey Together a year from now? And for me, I thought, yeah, it's not going to be as exciting for me if I look back a year. Always have that in mind whenever you're trying to get stuff, and hope you all enjoyed the video. Catch you all in the next one.